Too bad it didn't go as you thought it would. Just get that divorce paper submitted and disappear. My husband changed as soon as my father-in-law was admitted to the hospital. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Tom and I are going to divide his inheritance. You aren't getting anything. There is no money for a wife who is incapable of doing her own housework. I had no words. When I went to the city hall to file for divorce, however, I discovered a terrible truth. Nancy is my name. I am a 24-year-old housewife. Tom, my husband, is 40 years old. It's a May-December romance, as people say, but didn't go through a romantic courtship like in the movies. It just kind of happened. It was just luck that I ended up working for Tom's father at a construction company. For some reason, the company's president seemed to like me a lot from the start and repeatedly asked me to marry his son. The reason for this was that Tom, who was to become the company's next president, seemed to have no other marriage prospects. The president, who was worried about his future, was pessimistic about the company. He was worried that the company he had worked so hard to establish would end if there was no heir. Tom's father, who had met my father through work, even came to our house and asked for me as his wife. My family owns a construction company that has been in operation for generations. My father used to work for Tom's father's company for experience when he was younger. Tom's father helped my father in any way he could, including teaching him how to run a business. Maybe because of this, my father couldn't ignore the offer and decided to hear what he had to say. However, due to the age difference, my father did not agree immediately, but instead said that Tom and I should have a dating period. He wanted to respect Tom's and my choices, he said, but that the conversation about marriage would have to be after a dating period. Tom, on the other hand, knew that the marriage to me was a condition for taking over the company. So he agreed to this proposal of my father's. I had a good relationship with Tom, and we went on many dates, for dinner, movies, shopping, and so on. After some time together, Tom and I had grown close enough to believe that we would get along fine if we got married. We were officially engaged not long after that. Shortly after the engagement, Tom's father became ill and had to go to the hospital repeatedly. Instead of Tom, who was at work, and my mother, who couldn't drive, I, his fiancée, had to take care of my father-in-law in the hospital. My mother-in-law told me to focus more on housework for her family, telling me I'm not doing a good job considering I was going to become her daughter-in-law. "Nancy, hurry. The morning reception hours will end. Take him." Even before we married, I felt treated as if I were a maid. But I said, yes, I'm coming. I'll start the car. I was looking after my father-in-law. One day, my mother-in-law suggested that I move in, even though it was a little early, because it would be easier for me to take care of him. I agreed to this, considering having to commute from my parents' house to take him to and from the hospital every time. It might be easier for me just to live with them. I would have been moving there soon anyway. I assumed the wedding would take place after my father-in-law's health improved, so why not just write the marriage paper as I move in? There were no rumors of his having other relationships when I began living with Tom as his wife. I soon realized why he had reached the age of 40 with no relationship experience. Anyway, he is extremely conscientious about money. He was a miser who insisted on not wasting any money. He'd also keep meticulous records of our dates, telling me how much he'd spent on me, how much he'd spent on food and gas. Furthermore, my mother-in-law, who enjoys bullying others, is always next to me, being sarcastic and abusive. No one would dare approach them. Tom was very generous with his mother's spending and said nothing when she spent a lot of money on travel and name-brand goods. I was wondering if he was a mother con who loves his mother so much that he prioritizes her over anything else. To be honest, I thought I made the decision to marry too quickly. I reasoned I should have moved in but not marry him until I was more familiar with their personalities and domestic affairs. However, when I considered my father and my father-in-law, I found myself speechless. My father-in-law's unconditional love for me was the only thing that kept me going. That day, I was getting ready to take my father-in-law, who hadn't been feeling well since the previous day, to the hospital first thing in the morning. Observing that, my mother-in-law was treating me like her housekeeper. "Nancy, have you made breakfast yet? The way you cleaned yesterday was unacceptable. Can you hurry up and just do it?" My mother-in-law did nothing but move her mouth as she sat in front of the television. Tom was sitting beside her, idly watching TV. "I'm sorry, I don't have time. I have to take your husband to the hospital." "Oh, well, then shouldn't you have gotten up earlier? I have to go out as well. Make us breakfast before you leave." I wondered if they could do some of the work themselves, seeing the two not even caring about their husband and father. "Father-in-law, please wait a moment. I'll be finished in a minute." I rushed and made breakfast and served it to Tom and my mother-in-law. I went to my father-in-law after finishing everything and tried to help him stand up. "I'm sorry I'm making you work so much. I have to apologize to your father, too." At that same time, my father-in-law collapsed. "Are you okay?" I was horrified that my mother-in-law and husband just continued to eat breakfast as if nothing had happened. In any case, I ended up calling an ambulance. My mind just went blank until I heard the sirens. When the ambulance arrived a few minutes later, "Sorry, Nancy, I have to leave, so you handle the rest." "I have work to do as well, so please lock up." They left, leaving my father-in-law and me behind. When we arrived at the hospital, he had regained consciousness and was admitted. After the hospitalization procedures and doctor's explanations, it was already dark outside. "If something should happen to me, I will leave you something, Nancy," my father-in-law said as I sat with him on the bed. "It's my way of apologizing for making you endure my unappreciative son and wife. I guess I've been focused on work too much to know what's going on at home." My father-in-law continued in a weak voice, apologizing for wanting me to be Tom's wife. Soon after, I heard someone clear their throat by the door. Tom and my mother-in-law came in. They both approached me and inquired about the condition of my father-in-law. I thought that as family they must be worried, so I assured them. "He'll be fine. He just needs to rest a little and he'll be out of the hospital soon." I told them what the doctor said. Perhaps it was just my imagination, but Tom clicked his tongue, and it appeared as if my mother-in-law was disappointed. Several days later, when I was getting ready to visit my father-in-law, Tom and my mother-in-law handed me a paper and said, "Once you have filled this in, please go and submit it to the government office." The form had green ruled lines on it, and it was a divorce decree. Tom had overheard the conversation in my father-in-law's hospital room and told me, "My father became weak and said he was going to give you part of his inheritance, but we are not going to give you a penny. Wasn't it what you wanted all along, to marry someone so different from your age? But your plan was unsuccessful. Go file for divorce and you'll be a stranger to us." He cursed me profanely. What? I couldn't believe what I was hearing. I wasn't expecting him to say so much. "Just go to the government office. Tom and I are going to divide that man's inheritance equally. There is no one to share it with. There is no money for a wife who is incapable of doing her own housework." What I was hearing was disgusting. My father-in-law was about to be released from the hospital in a few days, but they sounded as if they expected him to die, which terrified me. How can you be so cruel? He's your family. He's not going to die. He will come home from the hospital and get better. And don't make fun of me saying I wanted inheritance. That is not something I intend to do. Of course, this marriage is not something I want. I hurried to the municipal office after filling out the divorce papers. I needed to get rid of these people to get them out of my life right away. When I arrived at the municipal office and hurriedly handed in the report, the receptionist returned it to me with a strange expression on her face. Was there something about the form? He said my name wasn't correct, so I assured him that it was my name. He still said it doesn't match the records. This time I was asked for my maiden name, and it did match. The official laughed and said that my marriage certificate had never been submitted. We had never been married. He returned my completed divorce paper to me. I contacted my mother-in-law to find out what had gone wrong, and she replied, "Oh, I completely forgot. I had it all this time." I didn't believe her. She lacks common sense. She mistreated me because I was her daughter-in-law. What? You did it on purpose, and you've been acting like there was nothing wrong, and was just using me as your maid? This time, I couldn't stay polite. Because it would be difficult to ask you to look after the house if you're a stranger. But a wife would do anything for me, and I could ask her for anything. On the other end of the phone, my mother-in-law was laughing, seemingly without malice. Oh, she doesn't have to worry about her share of the inheritance. I heard Tom's voice and laughing loudly. I was almost unable to contain my rage for them. I was determined to fight back, to not let them get away with this. First, I called my father and requested that he accompany me to the government office. I quickly explained the situation and hung up the phone, and my father came running into the city office, surprised. I asked the person who had just assisted me to explain the situation again, in front of my father. I even obtained a certificate of residence to confirm the facts, and discovered that not only his name but also his address remained the same. I was duped into thinking that because I had registered my marriage, my address had not changed while I lived in that house. Nonetheless, I was given the burden of being his wife and was forced to work hard. When it came to the inheritance issue, I was told to leave. I'm not sure how to accept the fact that I was treated this way. Even my normally mild-mannered father was enraged. I hurried with my father to the hospital where my father-in-law was staying. When we arrived at the hospital, my father-in-law noticed my father standing beside me and politely said, "You didn't have to come all the way here to see me." But as he listened to my father about this whole thing, his face became increasingly agitated. We sat in his hospital room and discussed what kind of sanctions we would impose on the two. Neither Tom nor my mother-in-law had visited him since the day he was hospitalized. Tom's father made a proposal to my father, knowing that he couldn't expect Tom to marry properly and become the family heir. Tom's father wished to entrust my father to succeed his business. Fortunately, Tom's father's business was profitable, so there would be no loss if it merged with or into my father's business. Tom's father believed it was acceptable as long as the company that he has safeguarded can continue to exist in whatever form it takes. Customers and employees would almost certainly leave if Tom took over the company, given his personality and character. If that happened, there would be no way for the company to survive. This is not a difficult choice I made, but a decision for the future. It's the best way to prevent our relatives from acquiring the company. And then Tom's father burst out laughing, and he announced his divorce. She thinks about money so much that she goes out and spends all her time in luxury without even visiting her husband. She deserves this. Is this enough to make up for the trouble I've caused you guys? He asked, turning to face me and my father. My father and I exchanged glances and raised the corners of our mouths, as if there could be no greater punishment. The lawyers and accounting firm my father had hired got to work the next day. Finally, they decided to merge Tom's father's company with my father's company, retaining the company name. Tom, the company's vice president, was fired, and an executive candidate from my father's company was transferred to fill his position as vice president. Official decisions will be made when Tom's father gets back to work. This will come as a surprise to Tom and his mother. Thus began the countdown to making them fall into hell. My father-in-law recovered completely and was discharged from the hospital 2 weeks later. My father and I went to the hospital to complete the discharge procedures and then picked him up and drove him home. When we got to his home, my mother-in-law was gone and Tom was working as usual. I could only describe them as cruel people. They had no idea that the next day they would be regretting their heartlessness. The following morning, I went back to my original work. There was a new vice president. Tom's father opened a morning meeting in a large conference room to discuss the company's future. He informed them that the company would be absorbed into my father's and that the vice president would be replaced. Then Tom came, clutching a letter of termination, and my mother-in-law clutching a divorce decree. "Hey, Dad, what in the world is this?" "This? What in the world are you thinking?" "I didn't hear about this." "I didn't hear about anything either. How could this be happening so suddenly? What in the world are you thinking?" The entire conference room was stunned to see the two of them ranting in front of so many employees. That's exactly the kind of lunacy I was hoping for. "It's you!" they exclaimed as soon as they found me. "You did something, didn't you? Aren't you the one who set this up just because you wouldn't get your inheritance?" "I didn't do anything. You guys started all this." "That's enough. You're bothering me in the morning meeting," a calm voice said. "Get outside." It was Tom's father saying this with a cold stare. Tom and his mother-in-law were kicked out of the conference room by nearby employees. Tom's father apologized to the entire conference room, finishing his story and bringing the morning meeting to a close. Tom and my mother-in-law, who had regained their composure by then, repeatedly asked for forgiveness of me and Tom's father. Of course, I had no intention of accepting their offer, so I ignored them. They appeared to be hanging around the company for a while, but they have recently stopped showing up. The security guards have given them strict warnings and they can't get in. They were also both asked to leave their home, according to Tom's father. They are currently living together in a dirty apartment near their former home. As for me, I am living a peaceful life as an office worker. My father, on the other hand, is still angry and is preparing to file a claim for compensation from Tom and his mother-in-law for what they did. The two have lost all hope of earning a living. This must be the start of hell for them. I won't help them, of course, though. I hope they've realized that the way you treat people will always come back to haunt you.
"Bobby's mom! Please come immediately!" The sight that I saw, having rushed over at the teacher's words, was my son collapsed on the spot. My son was unconscious after colliding with a friend and falling from the playground equipment. I was anxious and called help to my husband, but busy with his work, he didn't come to our son's side. Even though it's his job, it's just too cruel, while his own son is being taken away in an ambulance. I realized something. The worst reason he couldn't rush to our son's side. I'm Jennifer. I live with my husband John and our elementary school-age son, Bobby. John works in the hotel industry and doesn't have weekends off, so he rarely participates in Bobby's school events. He's never shown up for parent-teacher conferences or sports days. When we received the letter about a parent-child outing, I asked my husband, knowing he probably couldn't go, "John, there's a parent-child outing during the upcoming public holiday." "During a holiday? I can't. I have work." Despite understanding, I still felt lonely. When I asked other moms, they said that everyone is managing to attend with their spouses. Some people also work on weekends, but they seem to be adjusting to take the day off. When I mentioned this, John clearly seemed annoyed and retorted, "So what? You're telling me to take a day off too? You understand my work, right?" "Yeah, sorry." Reluctantly, I decided to attend the parent-child outing with Bobby alone. While many families were participating with both parents, there were also fathers participating alone because their wives were working. Well, it happens that wives have to work too. I wasn't bothered by it and thought I would enjoy the day with Bobby. However, when the children go off to play, it inevitably gets lonely. The other moms were there with their husbands, so it was hard to join in the conversation. As I was sitting there, the teacher came running towards me in a panic. "Bobby's mom, please come immediately." "Huh? What happened?" "Bobby. He collided with a friend and fell off the playground equipment." "What? Bobby?" I rushed to the scene to find my son unconscious. The teacher immediately called an ambulance, and I got in with Bobby, who was still unconscious. When we arrived at the hospital, he was immediately taken to the examination room. Realizing I hadn't informed John, I quickly called him. "Hello, John? Something terrible has happened. Bobby fell from the playground equipment and hit his head. He's unconscious." "What? Shouldn't you have called an ambulance before calling me?" "The teacher already did that. He's being transported to the hospital and undergoing examinations now." "All right. You're at the hospital then. Let me know the results via email when you know." "What?" I couldn't believe my ears. He wasn't planning to come to the hospital in this emergency? "What are you saying? You need to come home now." In response to my cry, my husband replied in a flippant tone, "Hey, didn't I tell you I can't take a break during this holiday?" "But we're in a state of emergency right now. Don't you understand?" "I know you're at the hospital, but what's the point of me going there? There's nothing I can do at the moment. We just have to wait for the results. Let me know when you get any updates. Bye for now." With that, John hung up the phone abruptly. I was left staring at my smartphone, dumbfounded. He wouldn't even come home for our son's critical situation. As I slumped there, a man approached me. "Are you Bobby's mom?" "I'm Alex's father." It was Alex's father who had spoken. Alex was the friend who had collided with Bobby. I remembered him attending the event with his son as his wife was absent. Alex's father bowed deeply towards me. "I am truly sorry for what has happened." I hastily shook my head. "I heard from the teacher that Bobby and Alex accidentally ran into each other. It was a careless mistake on our part as well. Please don't worry about it." Standing next to his father, Alex, with his bandages wrapped around him, stood there with his eyes swollen from crying. "It's because I ran into Bobby." I reassured Alex gently. "It's not your fault, Alex. Bobby will be absolutely fine. Once he's better, will you play with him again?" Alex nodded tearfully. His father, looking relieved, thanked me. "Thank you for your kind words. My wife should have been here to greet you as well. I apologize." "No, it's okay. My husband can't come back from work either." "Is Alex's mother at work too?" "No, actually." Alex's father hesitated. "My wife is on a trip with her friends. It was planned before this field trip, so she couldn't cancel it. It's embarrassing." "Oh, I see." I tried to contact her several times about the accident, but I haven't been able to reach her. As soon as Alex's father finished speaking, his phone rang. "Oh, it's my wife. Excuse me for a moment." Alex's father quickly answered the phone and explained the situation to his wife. "That's what happened. How soon can you get back here?" 2 hours? But how are you going to get back? You can't drive, can you? Oh, a friend is with you? That's good then. Be careful." After ending the call, he reported to me with a relieved look. "I'm sorry. I just got in touch with my wife. She has a friend who happens to be coming near here, and she will drive her here. It will take about 2 hours, though." "I see." Then my phone rang. "Oh, it's my husband. Excuse me." I excused myself and answered the call. "John, what happened?" "I managed to get some time off and we'll head there. I'll finish work in about 2 hours and I'll head straight there." "Really? That's great." After ending the call, I reported back to Alex's father. My husband will also be here in about 2 hours. It's good that we can both meet." Just then, we were called by the doctor who had finished the examination. According to the examination, Bobby had no abnormalities. He had just lost consciousness due to the shock, and they decided to observe him for now. Even though they said no abnormalities, it was still nerve-wracking not knowing when he would regain consciousness. As I came out of the examination room filled with worry, Alex's father was there waiting for me. He was holding Alex, who had fallen asleep from exhaustion. We started to chat about our families to distract ourselves from the situation. Alex's mother was a homemaker, but recently she had been going out with her friends often during evenings and weekends. When she was away, he would take care of their child. My wife usually takes care of our son Alex during weekdays, so I thought she should have some fun during nights and weekends. But now, I regret not canceling her trip during the school field trip. As I listened to his story, I couldn't help but compare it to my husband John. My husband, on his days off, be it weekends when he has work, or even on weekdays, he always leaves alone saying he needs to unwind. In contrast, Alex's father is actively involved in childcare. I found myself confiding my husband's complaints to him. As we talked, I noticed a strange coincidence. The behavior of John and Alex's mother coincided exactly. The days they couldn't attend events. The weekdays they went out in the evening. They were all the same. I suddenly became curious and asked, "By the way, my husband went on a business trip to Phoenix last month." "Oh, when was that?" "It was the first weekend of last month, I believe." My wife said she was going on a trip with friends that day and came back with souvenirs from Phoenix. Could it be? We exchanged glances. It had been about 2 hours since we called John and his wife. The first to contact us was John. "My husband will arrive at the parking lot soon, so I'll go and pick him up." I told Alex's father and headed to the parking lot. When I nervously peeked into the car, there was no one in the passenger seat. Could it be that Alex's mother is with him? That's what I was speculating. I brought John, who got out of the car with an innocent face, back to the hospital room where Bobby was sleeping. After exchanging greetings with Alex's father, Alex's mother appeared. I didn't miss the moment when she and John looked at each other's faces and were momentarily lost for words. As if nothing had happened, John greeted Alex's mother. "Ha, hello. Thank you for always taking care of our son." Alex's mother quickly returned the greeting in response to John's excited voice. "Oh, yes. Hello. Likewise." Upon observing the two, I decided to stir the pot a bit. "Oh, is this your first time meeting my husband, Alex's mom?" Alex's mother answered in a flustered manner. Of course. It's our first meeting. Isn't it obvious?" "You don't have to deny it so desperately. It wouldn't be strange if you had met him at parent-teacher meetings or school events, right?" That's impossible. I didn't know John's son was in the same class as my son." I hadn't called my husband by his name in front of her yet. She took the bait. This was suspicious. At that moment, I was convinced of my husband's affair with her. Moreover, it seemed that they had been dating without knowing that their children were classmates. Isn't it strange? "How do you know my husband's name if you're meeting for the first time?" Alex's mother was at a loss for words at my questioning. That is... Suddenly, John snapped at me to protect her. "Hey, Jennifer, what's your problem? That's rude to her, isn't it? She's the mother of our son's friend. You should show some respect." Alex woke up to the sound of John yelling, and then he pointed at John and said, "The man who comes to our house." "A man who comes to our house?" The hospital room fell silent. Alex's mother tried to cover up his remark in a hurry. "Whoa, hold on, Alex. What are you talking about? Are you mistaking him for someone else?" Perplexed, Alex continues. "No, I'm not mistaken. Dad, could you lend me your tablet?" Alex receives the tablet from his father, and with practiced ease, he shows a certain image. "Look, this." The image displayed is of a toy train set in Alex's room that he had assembled himself. The toy train set is a product sold by a toy company. "What's this? Isn't it the toy set that Alex usually plays with?" To his mother's puzzled question, Alex points to a figure in the background of the toy train set. See this man? I remember him because I look at this photo from time to time. Upon closer inspection, the image captured the living room in the background of Alex's room, where a man, John, was seen chatting amiably with Alex's mother. With this, you can't dodge the truth anymore, I muttered, giving them a hard stare. Alex's father, too, was trembling with anger. He raised his voice at his wife. You've been inviting your lover into our house while I'm at work? And look at the date. It's the day I was away on business, wasn't it? I, too, was shocked when I saw the date. This date? Wasn't it the day John didn't come home because he was on a business trip? Don't tell me. You stayed over at Alex's house? That is... She said it was okay, so I just... John readily admitted his infidelity and shifted the blame onto Alex's mother. Hearing this, she hastily countered. What? You're blaming me? It was you who said it's a waste of money to stay outside, wasn't it? Alex's father put an end to the ugly argument. Enough. Inviting your lover to stay in a house where there's a child? You're unfit to be a mother. You're utterly despicable. I disdain you from the bottom of my heart. At his words, John flinched, and he quickly tried to paint the lover as the villain. Indeed, she's unfit to be a mother. At least I've never met her in front of Bobby. I care about my child, you know. What? What's this guy talking about? He's joking, right? I felt a surge of anger towards my husband. Are you kidding me? Even though Bobby was unconscious, you didn't even try to come home, using work as an excuse. No, that's not true. I mean, I rushed to the hospital, didn't I? That's because she decided to come back, isn't it? You didn't have the slightest intention of coming back until Alex's dad told her about our son's accident. I thought it would be okay even if I wasn't there at that time. Whether it's okay or not, that's not the point. If you're a father, you should rush to your child's side when you hear they're unconscious, shouldn't you? Despite that, you prioritized your trip with your lover. You're not a father, or anything of the sort. No matter what you think, I am Bobby's father. And what do you plan to do if Bobby doesn't wake up? Can you, a stay-at-home mom, keep paying the hospital bills? Without me, you and our son can't survive. Grr! It's frustrating, but I don't have the savings to keep paying these hospital bills. Do I have no choice but to turn a blind eye to John's infidelity for now? Just when I was about to give up, a frail voice came from the bed. Mom? When I turned around, Bobby had his eyes barely open. Bobby! I clung to my son. Bobby hugged me back tightly, then said, Even if Dad's not here, I'll be okay, because I'll protect you, Mom. Hearing Bobby's words, John was dumbfounded. Bobby, why would you say something like that? Then my son answered firmly, Because you're moving out, right, Dad? After Mom went to bed the other night, you said that on the phone, didn't you? On the phone? I heard you talking when I got up to go to the bathroom, Dad. You said I don't care about Jennifer at all. If it wasn't for the kids, I would leave right away and be with you. That's what you said, isn't it, Dad? That's... John's face went pale. So, I'll grant Dad's wish. I don't need to be your child anymore. I don't need a dad anymore. John was shocked at Bobby's words. On the other hand, I finally made up my mind after hearing what Bobby had said. I've made up my mind. Please, let's separate. As I told this to my husband, Alex's father handed me his business card. Jennifer, I'll help with your decision too. The business card he handed over had the title of a law firm's director printed on it. We should have plenty of evidence aside from this toy train photo. Leave the claim for alimony and child support to me. I'm planning to make a claim to my wife too, so it's like killing two birds with one stone. Upon hearing his words, Alex's mother started to panic. What? Wait! I haven't agreed to a divorce yet. I won't leave you. Then Alex's father said to her in a cold voice, Huh? You, who cheated, have no right to choose. A low-life mother who would cheat in front of her child doesn't deserve custody. If you still object, it'll go to court, you know. You're aware of my high success rate in court, right? And with such favorable conditions, there's no way I'd lose. Seemingly resigned, Alex's mother quickly consented to the divorce and agreed to pay the compensation. Seeing this, John also signed the pledge to pay alimony and child support to his wife. He must have realized that it was futile to go against the lawyer. After that, both our marriages ended in divorce. The now free Alex's mother and John started living together as planned. However, their living arrangement didn't go as planned. Once they started living together, they began suspecting each other of cheating with someone else, and their relationship began to sour. Tired of the relationship, John actually ended up cheating with another married woman. As always, John was sloppy and was easily caught by the woman's husband, who demanded compensation. Alex's mother also cheated with someone else, but her lover merely took advantage of her and then dumped her. Alex's mother, who had spent all her savings, and John, who was drowning in debt from paying compensation. They both seemed to be stuck together, blaming each other for their misfortunes. At this rate, they're clearly heading for financial ruin, but I don't feel sorry for them at all. They reaped what they sowed. It serves them right. As for me, thanks to Alex's father, I received more than enough alimony and child support, and now Bobby and I are living a peaceful life. Bobby got better without any problems and returned to his daily life. He still plays happily with Alex, just like before. I've become good friends with Alex's father, even more so than my mom friends, and we talk about everything. My only wish now is to continue living a happy life with Bobby, just the two of us.